Hello, my name is Richard Haight, and I hope you're having a fine day. Today I would like to answer a question that was sent to me. I've had a number of questions sent to me regarding the spiritual awakening process and challenges on the spiritual path, and forgive me for taking so long to get to them. I've been quite busy with other things. But allow me to read the question first, and we'll go from there. This is from Orion. He says, I feel so lost sometimes. I feel out of control and continuously sabotage my happiness. I don't know what is wrong with me. I try to meditate and be positive, but that feeling that there is something defective within me still remains. What is wrong with me? So there's a lot of pain in this email. If you pay attention to your mind, this is a message to everybody. If you pay attention to your mind, you will sometimes notice that there are certain areas of your life where you too may self-sabotage, or where you too may feel there's something defective with you. Some degree of this sort of mental narrative exists in most people. Imagine a world where there were no such narratives. Imagine a way of being where such things no longer occurred in the mind. That is a byproduct or an effect of the spiritual awakening process. The more that such narratives occur, the more that the occurrence of such narratives are indicative of psychological damage. The more such narratives are there, the more indicative of the psychological damage that is there. The narrative in our mind that we are not good enough, there's something wrong with us, that we are defective, in many cases is a narrative that we have inherited. It may be something that others have told us and that we have accepted. It may come from abuse, mental, physical, or sexual. It may come as a result of being compared to brothers and sisters who are doing it better than we are, according to our parents. It could also be that we've inherited the narrative unconsciously because our parents hold that narrative, one or both. They were not good enough, or they felt defective, and that creates a kind of atmosphere around them, an energy around them that the child picks up and identifies with. So there are a number of ways in which one can find themselves suffering from these demonic voices in the head. There's a good test. I find it a good test anyway. At least it covers the basics. It's succinct, and it is a quick test to take. It's called the ACE test, and it was developed by some psychologists in San Diego. Let me bring it up. And it's 10 questions, and with each question that you answer yes to, you count a point. And what they've discovered is that the number of points that you have indicates the degree of, or the chance that you will suffer from issues, psychological issues. You may have addictions. You may suffer from depression more. chances of suicide start to skyrocket as the number of yeses increases. I'm not going to tell you too much more about the test, but I'm going to read off the questions to you now. And I would love for those who are listening to go ahead and just answer yes or no to these questions in your mind. You can count up with your fingers or mark it down on paper. And then and total it at the end. If you'd like to send me your totals, I'd love to hear back from you. And a little bit about, maybe you might share a little bit about how your life is. So here's the first question on the test. Number 1, did a parent or other adult in the household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you feel afraid that you might be physically hurt? Yes or no? Now, if you're on the line and you're not quite sure, give it a yes. Number 2, did a parent or other adult in the household often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Yes or no? Three, did an adult or a person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touch their body in a sexual way, or try to or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal sex with you? Yes or no? 4, did you often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? Or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Yes or no? 5, did you often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, have to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Yes or no? 6, were your parents ever separated or divorced? Yes or no? 7, was your mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her, or sometimes or often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit at least a few minutes, or threatened with a gun or knife? Yes or no? Number 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic, or who used street drugs? Yes or no? Number 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Yes or no? Now, that statement includes you. You are a household member. Number 10, did a household member go to prison? Yes or no? This could include you. Add up your answers, the number of yeses, maximum is 10. Now, I admit there are a few other probably important questions that could go on this test, but this will get most things. Let me tell you a little bit about the results of this test. Pardon me. Taking a little while to bring up, so we'll move on. If you have 4 or more of these, your chances of committing suicide go up 1,200 times compared to someone who has 0 of these points, 0 of these yeses, 4 or more. Your chances of becoming an alcoholic, a drug addict, going to prison, skyrocket. Chances of mental disease, having cancer or other sort of deadly physical disorders, skyrocket. Chances of being homeless, skyrocket, just at 4 or more. It appears that they did not test anything beyond 4. The test scores were so, even at 4 points, were so overwhelming. I don't think they saw much point in going beyond that as far as finding out. Now, roughly 12% of the population has 4 or more points. If it is any consolation to you, I had 7 on this test. So scoring high on this test really does indicate the degree of suffering that you probably have gone through in your life, and that may be tainting your life even now if it were unaddressed. But it's helpful to remember something that the Buddha said, that the lotus seed planted deepest in the mud grows the strongest and most beautiful flowers. Oftentimes, it's the suffering that we hold that becomes the motivation for us to seek spiritual awakening, for us to seek an inner freedom. If we were not in pain, if we were comfortable, why would we seek further awareness? Why would we look for anything? So I don't want to say that there's no use in the traumatic childhoods that we've had. Many things become useful when we change our attitudes towards them. It doesn't mean we should say, "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for beating and sexually abusing me," that sort of thing. We don't necessarily, need to say like that, but let's soften the sense of blame and shame that we might feel towards ourselves. Oftentimes, children take on the burdens of their parents. If their parents divorced, they think that it was their fault. One individual was sexually abused by his father, who, when the individual reported it, the father, who was in the military, was court-martialed, of course. And the individual who told me about this, was an adult at the time that he told me, said, "I got my father kicked out of the military." You see, he took the blame. It was his fault that his father was kicked out of the military. The reality is, the father sexually abused the child, and it was that action that got him court-martialed. It's not the child's fault that his father lost the job. But oftentimes, at deep levels, we've taken on shame and blame for the things that happened to us in our childhood. Or we've taken on a sort of victimization stance. That doesn't help either. Pity is not useful. Victimization is not useful. Instead, we just recognize, this is what I carry. These are the cards that I'm playing with. And we will start to work through that honestly. One of the first steps towards working through this is being very, very honest. First, start to admit if we have addictions, if we are abusive in any way, if we are carrying shame and blame in any way, or if we are playing the victimization card, as if it was poor me, poor me. Any of those things are very toxic. And so, first thing is we will admit if those things are happening. There's no need to blame the self for that. This just very authentic and very honest. Is that happening? Is that expression occurring? Are those thoughts occurring? Are those feelings there? Next step is start noticing the narratives in the mind, the self-judgments. The basic rule of awakening is we do not elevate one person over another, nor do we denigrate one person under another. No elevation, no denigration. These narratives are always comparative. I'm not good enough. Good enough compared to who? I'm not worthy. Worthy compared to who? There's something wrong with me. Something wrong with you compared to who? That's the first thing. I'm defective. Defective compared to what? Those narratives are not helpful. They're not helpful. If they were, I would not have received the email from this individual because their life would have been improved. So we start noticing the narratives, being very honest with them, that they are not actually helpful. The narrative is going to continue happening for a while, but we can notice it and recognize it's not helpful. Recognize that that's the inner enemy, that is the force of malice within. It has become inward turned. It is the inner critic that is out of control. It is causing more suffering. Another thing that's very helpful is to begin the practice of meditation. I have a free lesson up on my website, www.richardhaight.net, that you can go to the tab for meditations. When you're there, and there's a video there that's accessible to everybody for free, I teach the basic form of meditation there. That is sufficient to get you started. Practice that. Practice it every morning, at least 10 minutes. Every night before you go to bed, at least 10 minutes. If you'd like to know more about the ACE test, I highly recommend you look into it. You can find it at, you just type in ACE test, A-C-E test, and that'll give you some information on it and allow you to take it again or even forward that information to other people. I'll provide a link for it below the video. That would probably be best, both to the basic test itself and to the stats about the percentages of alcoholism. For example, 16 adults with 4 or more have a 16%. 16% of adults with 4 or more yeses are alcoholics, versus a person with 0 yeses, it's about 3%. So it's a really huge leap. Chronic depression, this is divided between women and men. For men at 4 or more, it's about 35%. For women, it's almost 60%. Women tend to carry more negative emotion, experience more negative emotion than men. So that percentage is huge. Roughly 40 and 60% respectively. So an average of about 50% of chronic depression. Person with 0 of these yeses, it's between 10 and 15%. As I said, there are other factors that are not on this test that will also cause traumas. But this test is a basic start. If you've been severely bullied as a child, that's another one. It's not on this test. It probably should be. Let's see, antidepressant prescriptions. The number of prescriptions goes up tremendously. Let's see, risk of perpetrating domestic violence goes up tremendously. From 2% or so, if you have 0 yeses, to 10 to 15%. If you've got, depending on man or woman, if you've got 4 or more. Interestingly, it tends to go up. It goes up a little bit more in men and women, but it takes a huge jump in women as well. Let's see. Prevalence of liver disease goes up tremendously, probably because of alcoholism or other drugs. Smoking as an adult, that's a big jump. Chances of being raped later skyrocket from about 5% percentage of reported rapes to 33% or so at 4 or more. We don't know what they would be at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. but they jump up tremendously. It's because one starts to get into unhealthy relationships. One may be going to bars more often, because one has a poor self-image, is going to relate to people who also have poor self-images, who are also traumatic, maybe suffer from traumatic childhoods. If you have, especially a boy, if a boy has been raped as a child, the chances of him becoming a sexual predator go up tremendously. It may be the same for women, I do not know, but certainly for men, that is often times the case. Suicide attempts, 1,200 times more, 1,200 times increase when we have 4 or more points. So this teen sexual behavior skyrockets, teen pregnancy skyrockets, worker performance issues, I mean, just on and on and on. COPD, the ramifications of having these early childhood traumas or childhood traumas, this is up to age 18, are tremendous. And these are just cold statistics, but that doesn't mean that everybody who has 4 or more of these points is going to suffer from all these things, although most likely you've experienced some or another. In my case, I experienced suicidal tendencies. I was suffering from chronic depression. Drugs, that sort of thing. That was really where it showed up in my life. And then a completely out of control inner narrative. I'm not worthy, something wrong with me, I'm defective. I was unable to harness the strength of my innate capacity, my intelligence, for example. There was so much stress, inner stress, so much inner turmoil and confusion, so much mental fog from carrying the weight of all of this internal pressure, that I was not able to find my true potential. And so we may not know our true potential. We may not be even scratching the surface of our creative capacities, of our thinking capacities, of our physical capacities even, until we start to resolve some of this, so we start to move beyond these mental narratives and these emotional traumas. So there's the test, the ACE test. You can find that. I'll have a link below. I'll provide a link for my meditation lesson on my website. I have a book called Experience Meditation Unbound, which will be very helpful if you're interested in meditation. And another book, The Unbound Soul. I have the same meditation in there, but also a teaching called Dance of the Self, which helps us to kind of release these internal pressures. I hope this video helps. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. If you'd like to make a donation, if you find this video helpful and you'd like to support this process, this project, you can find a link below as well. Thank you for anybody who feels open to supporting this project. Bye-bye.